Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with another episode of the long-lost Brewers Council. What the Brewers Council is a Patron tier that you can sign up for that I have to first off apologize to some patrons in the past, as well as Dan, who's been on this tier for months, and I was unable to fulfill your requests over the summer. It just got extremely busy, and I apologize. So for those of you that have I owe decks to, I think I owe 2 to a gentleman, and I owe like 11 to Dan. If you want to do the Brewers Council, I will do them. I have time now. I will just bust them out. I know that Dan wanted a Gaddock Teague 1v1, and I tried to build that deck to no avail. Right now, 1v1 is just really tough to... it's just a lot of High Tide decks. That's the main, like High Tide and Brea. And everything else is pretty much pushed out at the moment. It needs I think there needs to be a lot more aggressive bannings in at least the MTGO format of 1v1. But yeah, if there's a particular deck you want, especially with the upcoming standard, Dan, definitely PM me and I'll bust those out. But what the Brewers Council is, I just take a deck and then try to give my advice on how to make it better. Where I would go with a particular theme. So last night, actually this is beyond, I've had a lot of people at my store buy the Vampire Tribal Commander deck and asked me how to update it. This is probably one of I think it is the most popular. The Markov deck is the most popular commander at the moment. If you look at EDH Rec, out of the commander, it's just barely beating both one of the Vampires and the Dragons deck for popularity. It's one of the better built commanders right out of the box. However, I think there's a lot better ways to build this particular deck. I think that this deck wants to be very similar to like a Tajic, the Metalcraft commander, or other swarm-based strategies. So at the moment, this deck is kind of low on creatures. You can see that we're missing 15 cards, I believe. And there's one card that MTGO just didn't pick up when I imported the deck list. I'll have to figure out which one it is. But there's 15 new cards. Most of them actually don't want to be in this deck, and we'll look over those lists here in a second and where I would make some changes. But you can see they've made this really awkward curve. So 1 drops, 2 drops, 3 drops has a lot, but it's very heavy on the 4, 5, 6 drop slot for a deck that I say wants to be a swarm-based deck. It wants to get out as many creatures quickly because that's what the Markov, I can't even remember his first name, we'll look at it in a second here, wants to be doing. He basically turns all of your creatures into like a dragon fodder type card. For every vampire you cast, you get another vampire. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense for a deck to have these 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 drops. I don't think, yeah, there's 1 8 drop in the new set, but it gets reduced. And a lot of control when you don't want to be playing the control route with your Vampire Tribal. You want to be playing an all-aggressive deck, and you actually want to punish the combo decks early by killing them. This deck can kill extremely quick if you build it correctly. So it was just a huge head shake that it didn't include 1 drops in this deck. So let's just look at the commander. Let's pull up the Edgar Markov. So Edgar, let me zoom in here. This is pretty... There, we'll do one more. We have Edgar Markov here. Edgar Markov has Eminence whenever you cast another vampire spell. You get a 1/1 vampire creature token. And it has First Strike Haste. And man, I should look at like tribal, like vampire, the tribal cards. If I could bring back one mechanic throughout the history of Magic the Gathering, would definitely be tribal spells. I think that's the coolest mechanic. But anyway, so is there any tribal vampire spells? I can't remember if it was. I don't think it was. I don't think it was part of the tribal. There's Merfolk Goblins. Was there Soldiers? Was that the one that was? And then there was some changeling ones that would work for this. So there actually are some pretty. There's a good exile spell that is a tribal, a changeling, which might actually be worthwhile. We'll look at changelings here in a second, because there definitely will be a changeling we want to put in there. But anyway, for every vampire you cast, you get a 1/1 vampire while this guy's in the command zone. That is a awesome ability, and it should be the focal point of Edgar Markov. that is, you want to be casting a 1, 2, 3, and then on turn 4, you want to be casting 2 2-drops. You don't want to be casting a 4-drop. Same thing with 5. I'd rather be casting a 3-drop and a 2-drop on that to really swarm out. And then turn number 6, you want to go for the throat with Edgar Markov. You want to kill someone because he puts a +1 counter on all vampires you control. And then you could also have cards like Shared Animosity and Coat of Arms, those type of cards that could pump up all of your vampires and just one-shot an opponent and really punish those combo players. The ones that, the players that don't play any defenses, that just try to go for some stupid combo. I'm guilty of that on many of my decks, but Edgar is great at sniping off that particular opponent. And so it's an aggro commander deck with this swarm. So instead of being like a Skittles deck or what's the aura, the one that stacks up auras, you want to swarm it out. So you are vulnerable to board wipes, which that is where I think that some of these non-creature spells, you could play cards like the give all your creatures indestructible and proliferate, or not proliferate. We'll look at that one. What is the mechanic where you add another token of that type? I think that's a lot better route to go than try to run like Teferi's Protection and whatnot. So right off the bat, we're going to look at cards that deserve being cut. If you're running any vampire over the converted mana cost of 5, because again, 6, you're going to be wanting to cast your commander, it really needs to justify having a place. Same thing with 4-drops and 3-drops. We are going to really scrutinize them and see if there's just better cards out there for those particular slots. And then we're going to look at a lot of the vampires going back in time and see what the best 1s and 2-drops especially that we can put in this deck. And it's so sad that there are very few 1s and 2-drops in this particular deck. So new cards. Let's just start with the new cards here. The only cards... So let's go down I think the Blade is okay. It gives a creature +3/+1. 1 equip is really good. So once you get this card out, the equip cost gets very easy to do. And then we'll be adding cards like Gehini in this list, as well as the 2-drop sacrifice a creature spell that gives +2/+2 to it. We're going to be putting that in there too. So it ends up with Skull Clamp and the Blade. It gives you a nice little sack outlet to draw a bunch of cards. And I mean, Skull Clamp works really well with the Blade anyway. So whenever a creature dies, you may reveal a card from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card that shares a creature type. Put the card in your hand, the rest in your bottom. So it allows your tokens to then be able to draw you a bunch of cards to find really good cards to pair up with it. So I think the Blade would want to stick in here. Both of these curses are awful. The only curse you'd want in this deck in the precons would be the red one. But who cares about getting zombie creatures? It's terrible. It doesn't synergize your deck whatsoever. Yeah, get rid of it. Curse of Vitality, same thing. This is a weak card. Absolutely does not need to be in the deck. 3, you absolutely want to be casting a creature in this slot. You don't want a Curse of Vitality. Terrible. Karo Mind Eater. This is another one I think that you can justify throwing in. It's got a great ability, menace, and then it's got you basically make your opponent discard a card and then you can cast it. So I like this card. I think it's fine to keep in the list. Malthus Fiend Seeker, absolutely terrible because the 3 mana makes this feel more like a 4 because most of the time you're not going to be able to cast this before turn 4 or turn 5. It's not that great to begin with. It puts a bounty and then everyone draws cards and gains 2 life. Whoop-de-doo. Like anything that helps out these group hug type cards, I typically don't like to play. If you want to play Malthus, you build an entire deck around Malthus. But as far as putting this in the Edgar Markov deck, I think there's better cards at the 3-drop. Yes, we do like 3-drop vampires in this particular build. One that costs 1 of every color, not so much. Teferi's Protection. This is just a card that can go in any deck, any old deck. So if we're going to be adding these particular cards, it kind of takes away from the theme strategy of what we're doing. So Teferi's Protection is worth a lot of money too, so you can trade this card away and then get a lot of these pieces. But I don't think that it needs to be in this deck. All of your permanents phase out. Tokens go away, right? If they phase out, yeah, tokens don't phase out and phase back in, I believe. I'm pretty positive they cease to exist. And it's just, to me, I would rather be running Rootborn defenses here than Teferi's Protection. I think Rootborn defenses will do a lot better for the board wipe than the protection does. So we can just completely get rid of this and trade it for cards we need. Bloodsworn Steward, I do believe you want this because our commander does not have haste, Edgar Markov. Oh, it does. Okay, we're going to get rid of it, though. Then because it's pointless. It gives your commander creatures +2/+2 in haste. I don't think it's necessary in this particular deck. Your commander already has haste. So trade your Bloodsworn Stewards to everyone playing Nahab because it's so broken with Nahab. I'm going to do it. I think my next commander deck's going to be, I guess I'm spoiling this. It's going to be Theta Adel because it has a pirate theme. And then we're going to go back to Nahab because Nahab is definitely one of my favorite commanders. And I think I'm kicked out of my commander play group again because I turned 4 Nahabbed again against my play group. So anyway, I'll show you that deck sometime. But Bloodsworn's really solid in Nahab the Eternal. Anyway, so I don't think that this one is necessary because we have haste on our commander. So just get rid of the Bloodsworn Steward. The Disrupt Decorum. Go to all creatures you control. Again, this doesn't fit in your deck. Who cares if you make all your creatures attack something else? There's better ways to make your creatures... Like, would you rather have this or be playing something like an Obelisk of Erd this turn, or a Door of Destinies, or a Kondo's Banner? Just something like a tribal to pump up all your creatures. Shared Animosity in this slot. You don't want a lot of non-creature spells that don't work with your tribal theme. So this one is another cut. So far we've kept, what, two cards? Kindred Boon. Again, there's better ways to give your things indestructible than Kindred Boon. A lot of your cards are going to be 1s and 2-drops. You're not going to care about. This is a huge mana sink. You have to put a ton of 4 mana just to cast it, and then 2 mana to start giving things indestructible. And then they're not even indestructible anymore if this dies. So it doesn't work in this particular deck, in my opinion. New Blood is, I'm okay with this existing, okay with this not existing. It is a gain control effect, does cost 4 mana. Again, I think there's better ways to spend your mana than just gaining control of a creature. You want to be focusing on the swarm. So something that gains control of a creature, I don't think, unless you're taking something like the 1/5 artifact, what's the one, the Arbiter, Silent Arbiter, that allows only 1 creature attack per turn. But you need to sack out and then kill the damn thing. Unless you're like taking care of this really problematic card, I don't think New Blood is a card that you want in here. Again, I think that you need to be worried more about like ghostly prisons and propagandas than you do about New Blood. Taking control of a particular creature and turning it into a vampire. It's just not something I'd want in. Bloodline Necromancer, I'm okay with keeping this card in or taking it out. So it's 3/2 lifelink, and then you can return a vampire back from your graveyard. It does curve pretty good because if you've lost a vampire, you can bring it back. And it is 5. So if this was a 6-drop, absolutely not, because 6 you want to be casting. However, again, I still would rather be casting a 3 and a 2-drop on this particular turn than 1 card. So I'm okay with this existing, okay with this being cut. Crimson Honor Guard, I think that it's too weak for what the ability does. It's 5 mana for 4/5 trample, and then if they don't control their commander, it deals 4 damage to them. There's better things to do at this point than the Crimson Honor Guard. A lot better vampires in existence. And Kindred Charge, you create a token of each. So you choose vampires for each creature you control. Of the chosen token, create a token. Those creatures gain haste and then exile them. I'm okay with Kindred Charge existing, as I think that we are swarming the battlefield, and this is a good way just to have that 1 turn just go all in. And again, something like Shared Animosity with this, or Coat of Arms, just is insanely lethal. Then we have the Patron of the Vein. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target creature an opponent controls. Whenever opponent controls dies, put a +1 counter on each vampire control. This one I'm okay with cutting or keeping it in. The 6-drop makes it very awkward because it's directly in competition with your commander, which is 100% what you want to be doing that turn, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think that this card should be cut. It does put a +1 counter immediately on all of your opponents, or all of your vampires. Yeah, I think it's okay to stick in. So we're not going to cut at the moment unless we can find something better. Then Lycia, the Sanguine Tribune does not work in this deck. A lot of your vampires do have lifelink. It does reduce the cost. It still costs 3 colors. I don't even think this card is very good at casting this for 3 mana to begin with. For just a 4/4 that then can get counters. It's first strike. Who cares? It's just a bad card. So it's something that you probably want as a commander because it can get really big and then commander damage off people. And then you can put it in like this Mardu life gain deck and cast it really, really quickly and have a lot of just degenerate things you can do with it. So I do like this card as a commander. I don't like it in this deck, so it can also be cut. So that leaves us with very few cards from the other slot. The mana base is going to need to be reworked, and let's just check out. This is what I'm talking about. If you go to EDH Rec, you can see most of the people are just keeping the deck as is, and all the top cards, and adding like Bloodline Keeper, and with some other cards, Triana and Bloodline Keeper, and what else have they been adding? Necropolis Regent, which I actually don't think goes in this deck because it's just too high of a converted mana cost card. So even like Kalista in this deck, I don't think really deserves a slot. Depends on your meta. If you're worried about or stopping like combos that things don't get exiled. So I don't know. Kalista is pretty decent. There's a lot of, I think if you sit down a commander deck, there's at least one person that's going to try for some sort of die effect. So yeah, I think Kalista could go in here. So anyway, you can see that I'm just not too happy with the way people are building this deck. And we are going to completely do an overhaul for it. So let's pull up the good old MT Joe and let's start cutting cards. So the first thing, let's go to the top heavy cards. Draw cards are okay. I'm not a fan of Skeletal Scrying. I think there's a better way to do that. We're actually going to work off the Madness ability for this. So I'd rather, was it Restless Dreams that allows you to discard cards to draw cards, which I think would be better than Skeletal Scrying. So I think we can safely cut Skeletal Scrying. We're not like a dredge deck either. We're not putting a lot of cards in our graveyard. And again, we are an all-in deck. It's going to be kill or... And I think that's the way you have to play Commander, too. I know a lot of people like to, like, ooh, let's just play... Like, this deck just seems to be very random how the deck's going to play out during each Commander deck. I don't like randomness. Let's get rid of that particular deck. Damnable Pack, same thing. We don't have a lot of ways to generate a lot of mana after we're going to cut some cards, so we can easily get rid of the Damnable Pack. Butcher of Malachor. Yes, Butcher of Malachor can be this, like, Skull Clamp, lock, with your sack outlet. I am going to throw this over here at the moment. Our sideboard slot's going to be maybe board at the moment, because it's I wouldn't fault you for putting this in the deck, but I also don't think that it works in the deck, as we want to be curving out at 4 and 5. Merciless Eviction. Merciless Eviction's okay. It's an okay slot, but this is a deck that can go in any 2-color if you're using black or white. So it doesn't really fit in this theme. We could easily cut it. The Vein Drinker, flying. It can deal damage equal to the power to target creature. That creature deals damage equal to its power to Vein Drinker. And whenever it's dealt damage. Vein Drinker just seems like a weaker Olivia. And so I'm not even sure we're going to put in Olivia Voldaren in this deck. So I just think that 6 mana, it's terrible. Skeleton Vampire creates bats. It synergizes with Skull Clamp. Synergizes with Shared Animosity that we're going to bring in. But again, look at the converted mana cost of this card. It is just too high, unless we want to put like something like Teysa in the deck. Teysa would be kind of cool, to be honest, because your vampires would then turn into spirits and whatnot. But I don't think that we want to go that route, so the Skeletal Vampire we can get rid of. Blood Tribute. Tap an untapped vampire you control. Target opponent loses half their life. You gain life if you did the kicker. Who cares? There's better ways to make your opponent lose life. One, you want to make an enemy with one opponent, not even kill them. Maybe gain some life. Yes, with like Sanguine Bond, this has a nice little combo, but it's not how we want to build this deck. Let's just absolutely chuck this card. Terrible. Blood Baron Viscopa, it does have the converted mana cost 5, so it is okay to put in this. Lifelink protection from white and black, sure. As long as you have 30 or more life, which is easy in Commander, and your opponent has 10 or less life, and opponent has, it gets +6/+6, it becomes a 10/10, can one-shot that. There are better vampires that come out quicker. I'm going to put this over the maybe board because it's okay, it's acceptable, but it's not what you want to be doing. Sanguine Bond. Sanguine Bond likes to have a combo with like Exquisite Blood, with the Blood Chief Ascension, those type of cards where you're gaining life, opponent losing life. If you want to build a deck, there are better places to put this. Is this better than something like Coat of Arms, Shared Animosity? We only have a very limited amount of slots to put these cards. Would Perforos be better here? Absolutely. Would Impact Tremors be better here? Absolutely. So the non-vampire tribe is going to be very, very limited. Sanguine Bond is not a card that wants to be in a swarm deck. Malachor Blood Witch. When enters the battlefield, your opponent loses life equal number of vampires you control, you gain life. This one is okay because it's got that enter the battlefield effect, and later on it could be used to do a lot of damage. This is one, though, that I don't think is absolutely necessary in the deck and can definitely go away. Triana, Kalista Blood Chief. This card is another one that I feel is just weaker. It's good in decks that have a lot of mana dump. So this is like the black market decks, a lot of the ones like Thran Dynamo, Cobble Coffers, Urborg to Yawgmoth combo. This is where you'd want this card. Unfortunately, though, I don't think that it wants to be in this deck. I'm going to throw over the maybe board because it is acceptable, but it's something that I'm not too keen on keeping. The Bloodlord of Vazgoth. This one's a 3/3, and it's got the Bloodlust. It becomes a 6/6, and whenever you cast a Vampire spell, it gains Bloodlust 3. Unfortunately, though, I think that you've cast most of your vampires at this point, and it's just not going to impact the board as much as something that, again, like a Shared Animosity, Coat of Arms type card. And we only have a limited amount of slots for this, so I do not like the Bloodlord of Vazgoth in this particular deck. Black Market is something later on that adds a lot of mana for you to do some juicy things. I don't like Black Market in this deck. I think it's very unnecessary. Anawan the Ruin Sage. Here is finally a vampire I think that's worthwhile to put in the deck because it does make your opponent sacrifice creatures. What's really nice too is it goes one round before it gets back to you, and then you have your Edgar Markov, and so it basically kills 3 to 4 creatures depending on your pod, if you're in a 4-man pod or a 5-man pod, and those are blockers so that it gets out of the way. So I do think the Anawan barely makes the cut. Fell the Mighty. Why do you want to be destroying your own stuff? I think they put this in here just to have a way to deal with like the vampire deck, and there's better things to do here. It's just not good. It's not instant speed. We're cutting it. Well, Lost Dreams. Whenever you gain life, you pay X and draw X cards. No, there's better draw spells. Get rid of it. Door of Destinies we do want. So whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, put a charge counter on it. Creatures you control the chosen type get +1/+1. You're swarming. I think Door of Destinies is fine. It does come out a little bit late, but it's something that is acceptable. The Outpost Siege. Outpost Siege is very acceptable as well because we're usually going to be running dragons, and it gives us another Blood Artist type ability. And we are going to be running the usual suspects for this: Impact Tremors, Perforos, Outpost Siege, Blood Artist, the other Blood Artist that is included in this deck. We'll probably end up putting Azul Port Cutthroat in here. I think that it's still, even though it's not a vampire, is worthwhile. So it definitely wants to stay in this. Sangromancer. Do you really need to gain life? We've got rid of the gain life type effect of it. Discarding, and whenever a creature opponent controls dies, you gain 3 life. I don't think it's necessary. We have Blood Artist that can tax and also lose life. We've already taken the Sanguine Bond out of here. So yes, it has some good combos until we cut those cards. Same thing. I think that the 4-drop, there's better vampires. We're going to cut it. Siphon Mind, it's a draw spell. Make your opponent discard cards. There's better things to do in this route. We're getting rid of it. Falconwrath Noble, we absolutely do want Falconwrath Noble because there's a Blood Artist. Consuming Vapors, talk about another terrible card. Sorcery Speed, Consuming Vapors, better ways to make your opponent sacrifice creatures. I think that we definitely want to cut it. I'm okay with like Ambition's Cost, but I think we're going to have better draw spells. I want to run like Faithless Looting, Cathartic Reunion, Tormenting Voice as our draw spells because we're going to be running vampires. So we're going to put it over the sideboard at the second. Return to Dust is okay. It gets rid of those pesky artifacts and enchantments. I do think that we want this, other than I think Wear Tear might be a little bit better in this slot. We're actually probably going to add a Wear Tear because, like I said, you need to take care of Ghostly Prison and you need to take care of Propagandas. There are many artifacts and enchantments that can just shut us down, so I think that we do need to include some sort of Return to Dust. So we're going to keep it in. Worn Power Stones is absolutely garbage in this deck. There are better mana ramps. We're not ramping in anything high anymore. Get rid of it. Crackling Doom, I think, is a very acceptable removal. We do want some removal, and I think Crackling Doom is great. It at least does 2 damage to each opponent and makes them sacrifice their biggest creature. I think it's fine. The Captain, absolutely want the Captain in this deck. The Mortify, absolutely want the Mortify. Destroy creature or enchantment. Propaganda is enemy number 1. The Rakish Hare, we do want, or Rakish Air, it's not a rabbit. We definitely do want this because it is a tribal type card. The Vampire Nighthawk is, Vampire Nighthawk's kind of awkward. It is a 3-drop. There could be better 3-drops. It does have some sort of evasion. this is a card that I'm going to put over here for the moment because it definitely could be cut, but it's an acceptable card. Underworld Connections, I think, is just too slow for what this deck wants to be doing. We're going to cut it. The Pawn of Ulamog's going to stick in here. It allows for these like this Outpost Siege, Perforos, Impact Tremors combos to happen with the Skull Clamp. We're going to keep it in. Captivated Vampire, absolutely good. We're going to keep it in. Read the Bones. It's another one that we're going to try to find better cards for the draw spells. Dark Imposter. Exile target creature and put a +1 counter on Dark Imposter. Dark Imposter is all activated abilities of all creatures exiled with it. It is a huge mana dump. It is acceptable, but there could be better stuff, so I'm going to put it in the Vampire Nighthawk category. And same thing, the Blood has Ritual. It is quite weak for what it does for 3 mana. Remember, any card that we're going to be running for 3 mana needs to justify its slot. That is the slot where you want to be doing... Your vampires need to be doing amazing things, the 3 and 4, if we're going to keep them in. All right, so we do want all the signets in this one. Absolutely do. It is a ramp that is acceptable to get to your commander. Tide Drinker is one of those cards that I think is fine. The Extort's actually pretty powerful on it. So for a 2-drop, we definitely want it. Go for the... It's terrible. A lot of the cards we want to destroy are artifact creatures. Absolutely get rid of it. And Blood Artist is a card that we do want in this deck. Blind Obedience is okay. It allows us to get through. I particularly don't think that we want it since we've cut all our lifelink type cards. And Skull Clamp, Swords to Plowshare, Blade of the Blood Chief, they can all stay in. These are fine. So we can add other removal spells like Terminate. I think that right off the bat we need the Ghostly Prison Killers. I'm going to add a Wear Tear into the mix as it is really, really versatile. And destroys enchantments, destroys artifacts. Another one that we probably need for control is we're going to add an Anguish Unmaking. And we are also going to add a Vindicate. And I think that now we have a pretty solid removal package for the deck. All right, so lands are a little bit heavy. We want to get rid of all the Guild Gates. We want to get rid of the Crossroads. We want to get rid of the Cinder Barons. We want to get rid of the Boros Guild Gate. We want to get rid of the Boros Garrison. We do not want that. Bog is okay either way. I don't want any tap lands, so we're going to get rid of every comes into play tap lands because we can find better ways to do this. And so Opal Palace is fine because it's... I'm going to keep the Nomad Outpost too. I think that's the one tap land I think that can come into play tapped. We don't want the Carnariums or Guild Gates. We do not want any land that comes into play tapped. So the Basilica, the okay, so Terramorphic Expanse, Urborg Volcano, and we'll update this with a better mana base. So we'll get to that in a second. So and I would say you probably want between 34 and 35 lands for this particular deck because we're curving out quickly. We have the signets. We have a lot of ways to get there. So first of all, before we look at vampires, let's bring in the really good tribal cards. So I'm going to add a Coat of Arms. Comes out the turn before your vampire, so it's pretty good. And an Obelisk of Erd. And we also, because it gives your creatures +2/+2, and it's very easy to convoke this in with your vampire tokens. And we could put in a banner, a Konda's banner, if we really wanted to, but I think that it might just be a little hard to... it is +2/+2, so we'd have to equip it, though, to our commander, is the problem. It has to go to a legendary creature, which could be put on, like, an Olivia. We are in a Yahini, so it is okay. I'm going to put it over in the maybe board. This is actually an underrated card in Commander. A lot of people don't know this card exists, and it's pretty powerful. It will give all creatures +2/+2 if you put it on your commander, which a Swarm deck is everything. So the Coat of Arms, and then the last one we're going to put in is Shared Animosity. And I do believe in this deck, Impact Tremors is worthwhile, even though we don't have some crazy combos with this. But Impact Tremors will do 1 damage to each opponent, and it comes out quick. And the other one is Perforos we want in here. Perforos is something that we can... swarm out and do a lot of damage to opponents. Plus, it has the ability to pump up all your creatures with the secondary ability. So I think we're good right now on this kind of like tribal theme. We could run into Vampire Nocturnus, but Vampire Nocturnus is actually quite awkward if we don't have a black card on top. We have a lot of them. I mean, it's probably pretty 50-50, I would say, once we get... yeah, once we get down to it. Yeah, I'd say it's going to be pretty 50-50. So Swords to Plowshare is another card you could cut for Terminate. Wonder if that's just better. Swords Exiles, though. Do we get rid of the... Nope, the Swords there. Swords I'm okay with. So again, I'm going to try to do as minimal cuts as possible to upgrade this deck. All right, so now let's start looking at the particular vampires we want. Well, first of all, the card draw is we're going to run Cathartic Reunion as well as Tormenting Voice. And I think Faithless Looting wants to be in here as well. And this just helps us. None of these are actually card advantage, but they do get rid of excess lands, and they do help us with the Madness, which we are going to be running. And so right now we're going to go to Vampire, and we're going to start putting in the low converted mana cost vampires. And you'll see there's some goodies in here. And so I am under the thing that you definitely want as many vampires as possible. Let's get the mana base going so I know what I'm working with here. So first of all, we want all the shock lands. So we want a Godless Shrine. And then we want the, oh man, Blood Crypt. And then we want the Sacred Foundry. And now we want all of the fetch lands that can go get the combos. So we want to pay 1 life. I'll find all the fetch lands. We want Arid Mesa. We want Bloodstained Mire. We want the Flooded Strand. Let's see here. We want the... You definitely put the tribal, the one that taps to cast for a creature. I don't know if we need it. Misty Rainforest doesn't hit what we want out of it. We don't have a color. We want the Marsh Flats. How does your commander group play? I want to ban... In my commander group, I don't like being able to play Flooded Strand in a non-blue deck. That's just the way I like to play it. It's too much of a color. This is a color identity, in my opinion. But I don't make the rules. We'll run a Polluted Delta and a Scalding Tarn. Do we miss any of them? And a Verdant Catacombs, right? We have the black, 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 black. And what's the other black one I'm missing? Black, green, black, blue, black, white, black, red. Okay, we have all the black, white, blue, white, black, white, red. Okay, so we need Windswept. There's Windswept. And the red, we have red, blue, red, white, red, black, and then we need red, green. So now we have all of our fetch lands, our usual suspects with fetch lands, one of each of them. And I think we probably should run the also ones you can fetch up, like this, the double colored lands, the allied ones. So there is the Smoldering Marsh and the white red, no, white black, no. That's the only one we can run for this one is the Smoldering Marsh. And then we could run like the Cycling lands here. They do come into play tap though. But I think the check lands are probably the next best, or the pain lands. So go back to pay 1 life, and then we'd run the particular ones that probably run a Mana Confluence, yeah, and a City of Brass would want to be in here too, just because they're the best ways to fix our mana base. And then Caves of Kolos can come in here. So deals 1 damage is what it's called. Deals 1 damage. So we want the Caves. We want the Battlefield Forge. We want the can't do Llanowar Waste. Can't do Shivan Reef. The Sulphur Springs, I think that's one of each. And that puts us at a pretty healthy mana base. I think we can go to 34, so I'm just going to cut Swamp. We do want the most swamps as possible, but this gives us a good... I'm going to cut 2 swamps, just because we're a little bit easier on the mana base. And that should be okay with a Swarm deck that curves out at 5. So now, okay, we'll go back to vampires now that we've... I'm sure you can get a better mana base, but for time's sake, we're already to 35 minutes on this monstrosity. We're going to go over to vampires. So vampires in this deck, you want to go as low as humanly low as vampirely possible. And find, why is it trying to find vampires of the wrong color? Reset all, oh, vampires, vampire. Okay, so vampire, we want to run all of the 1-drops that are even remotely good. So the Indulgent Aristocrat for sure. The Pulse Tracker for sure. Let's look at some other ones. The Assassin. The Assassin is good because you can start pumping into it. I think the Assassin's actually a card you want in here. So the Gruldaz Assassin. Quag Vampires, I don't know if... I think we're going to have enough 1-drops. We probably want 8 or 9. The Gorger, absolutely, we want the Gorger. The Impaler's okay. It's something you can pump some mana into. The Lacerator is probably... I don't know if the Lacerator wants to be in here. The Cutthroat, I think, is fine with the Lifelink. That's another good 1-drop. The Alley Denizen, probably not. The Vampire, who has 10 or less life, it gets +2/+1. I think this one's fine, too. I actually do like even putting in... The Noble's great in this one. The Insolent Neonate is great. And I think that's where we want to be with... We got the Noble, we got the Falconet Gorger. We want to be with the 1-drops. You could put the Lacerator. I'm going to add the Lacerator. We want... This 1-drop wants to have a lot of cards in it. You want to be casting a turn 1 vampire. You don't want to be not doing anything on turn 1. All right, so turn 2, Asylum Visitor has Madness, which is really good. Bloodseeker is actually pretty good, as it will tax your opponents. I think it's worthwhile to put a Bloodseeker in here. We have a Blood Artist. Call the Bloodline is okay. It allows you to discard cards to put in a vampire. So it does allow you to get the Madness, but I'm not quite sure this is how we want to be going. I'm going to put it over to the maybe board. The Carry Thrall is okay because it dies, it brings back an Eldrazi, but I don't think it's where we want to be either. The Heir of Falconwrath does allow you to get Madness off, but I think there's better ways to do this. We do want Madness Enablers. The Kalista Healer, there's not enough allies to make it worthwhile. The Coldblade is fine, but I think there's better things. Bloodsworn is great. It can give your other vampires haste. It's a 2/1 flyer for 2 mana. I think it's perfect in this deck. The Coldblade there's probably a better 2-drops because we don't want to go too much in 2-drops because there are some good ones. Gatekeeper Malachor, absolutely. It's something that is very versatile. Gifted Aetherborn, I actually do like this one because it's Death Touch in here. It's got a lot of versatility. Same thing with the Stormkirk Condemned. It's something that you definitely want to bring in. The Highborn is something you can tax opponent. Definitely bring it in. And the Vampire Hexmage kills a creature of our opponent, or a planeswalker of our opponents quite easily. And I think it's fine. So Exterminator, I think, is just too much of a mana dump. We could easily justify putting it in. It can start killing off creatures. It gets +1 counters quite easily with a lot of the cards that we like. There's lots of ways to abuse this with vampires getting +1/+1 counters. I'm not quite sure that it wants to be in this deck, though. I'm going to put it in at the moment, and we might cut it. The Fury Blade Vampire is actually pretty good to enable Madness. It has Trample, which is actually pretty good in this deck because it's going to get big, so I do think that we want the Fury Blade. So Vampiric Fury is kind of fun, but I think there's better tribal ways to do it. We have a Tithe Drinker. Where's the 2-drop one that kills a creature? Sacrifice a creature. How do we miss that one? I think I actually missed... Oh, Bloodthorn Vampire absolutely wants to be in here. It is our sack outlet. We want to be running the sack outlets in here because it allows us with the Outpost Siege and the Blood Artists to really go crazy. So Zulaport Cutthroat, of course, could go in here. Now, 3-drops need to be justified. We only have a few slots left in this deck, and we have a lot of ways to go. So I think the Dark Imposter is probably something that's going to get cut. So let's just move over these cards that we had in the maybe board. Uh-oh, where do we put them? Now I got rid of the maybe board. So the Dark Imposter and the Bloodhusk Ritual are probably going to end up getting cut. I think there's better things that can go in this particular deck. Do we want the Banquet in here? This Stensia Banquet. Deals damage target point equal number of vampires, draw a card. I don't think it's actually worthwhile. That's a weak card. Did that actually get put in here? I'm not sure if I clicked on something on accident. Vampire Nighthawk 2, I'm going to throw over to the maybe board. It's something, you know, that it's funny that I put in the 2-drop, the Gifted Aether Point, but the Vampire Nighthawk is a little weaker than that one in this particular deck. All right, so let's go back over to vampires at the 3-drop slot. So we have the Blood Baron, which I do think we want a sack outlet. And let's go down. Let's see. The Bloodrite Invoker, absolutely not. The Chosen Markov, no. The Dark Imposter, no. The Torture, no. The Bloodsucker, no. Bloodsucker can get kind of good because whenever a creature with toughness 4 or greater dies, each opponent loses 2 life and gain 2 life. Do you know what? This actually does seem like a combo piece with Door to Destinies. We're going to put it in a Caribou Bloodsucker. Yeah, this one's actually not bad at all because it allows us to go all in. And once we do need, there is some ifs. So like Door of Destiny, Coat of Arms, Obelisk of Erd, and same thing, the Captivator, all of those can put our vampires up to 4 toughness, or even our tokens. And that makes a way good sack outlet and then just kill everyone. No on the Cutthroat. We do want the Vampire Aristocrat. I think we want all of these like sack outlet ones. But these ones might be weaker than some of the sack outlets that are coming up. The Envoy, no. The Noble, absolutely not. Yahini. See, there's another sack outlet with the Yahini. So the Arrogant Bloodlord, when it blocks, becomes block with power 1 or less, destroy Arrogant Bloodlord. No, that's terrible for this one. We have the Captive Vampire, it's already in here. We do want to draw on it. So 3-drop, we definitely need to justify. That's one that I think is good. And the Pond of Ulamog's already in there. Nighthawk's in our maybe board. The Bloodbane Vampire, or the Bloodmad Vampire has Madness too. And I believe this is still casting a vampire. Yeah, you still cast with Madness, so it still works, and it gets bigger. And so this is one we'll put in the maybe board. I do want to run a lot of the vampires. The Air is already in the deck. The Banquet we got rid of. The Masquerade is kind of awkward. I think the Masquerade's worthwhile to put in as another like Lord type effect. The Occultist is a one that I actually do like a lot. So Occultist is our card draw. We're going to bring it in. And then Ripper we don't want. Blade Master's okay. We don't want it. The Crossbow we didn't want. Blood Curse Knight is okay, but it's not worthwhile to put in. The Triana's Emissary is actually pretty decent. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 1 life because we do want to tax our opponents. But I think that the 3-drop again is just something that we really, really need it to justify. So I'm going to throw the Emissary over to the sideboard. Olivia Mobilized for War I do think is worthwhile because it allows you to have this like madness type effect, have creatures come in with additional +1/+1 counter, and get haste. And to me, it's worthwhile. In fact, it's even better than the other Olivia in this particular deck. Then we have the Chosen, no. Driver of the Dead, no. Driver of the Dead's okay. When it dies, return a creature card with convert match 2 or less in your graveyard to the battlefield. It has some kind of cool combos. You sacrifice it, then it can bring back like a Blood Artist if the Blood Artist has died. And so this is over the 4-drop though, so they really, at this point, need to be very good. And so we're just going to go down these to try to find cards that are 100% worthwhile. One is this Bloodline Keeper, absolutely. As it's one of our tribal, it gets +2/+2 once it gets flipped. And we don't want Krovik's to curse. Kalitas goes in the sideboard because it is kind of good. It allows us it does swarm out with zombies, which still does work with Door of Destinies. Not really Door of Destinies, but Coat of Arms, and it will work with like the Shared Animosity. Vampire Nocturus is so awkward in this because we are running a ton of black creatures, but I'm not sure if it's going to make the cut. Havenghoul Vampire, whenever it deals combat damage to player, put a +1. Whenever another creature dies, put a +1. If this did other creatures, I'd put it in, but I don't think at 4 it's worthwhile. The Innkeeper, probably not worthwhile. The Duelist, not worthwhile. The same thing with the Stormkirk. The Gorger. The Gorger is kind of good because it does have the Manus, which is something we want. The Cliffhaven Vampire is actually pretty good with the stacking is kind of awkward with this though. Does it stack for East Lifelink instant? I'm not quite sure. And this does work with blood. With the blood, yeah, I think the Cliffhaven Vampire does want to be in here. So you can already see that we're really low on slots. These both Sorens, I think, are something you want in this deck. And now we're getting into the 5-drop that really... So the Falcon of the Aristocrat I don't think is worthwhile. We have enough of the other Sack Atlas. We'll probably end up cutting a few of those. And same with Olivia Voldaren, we're going to put it in the maybe board just because we want to swarm out as quickly as possible. So Nightwatch, no. The Soothsayer, no. This is where it starts to get really... They have to be amazing. Yeah, it's got to be really, really good at this point to be putting in the deck. We do have an Anawan. We don't care about Metalcraft. Don't care about any of these, or the Fiend of the Shadows, or the Krogan Vampire, or the Dread Knight. Like, this is where it starts to get too tough, in my opinion, to justify putting these in, except for the Pariah. I do like the Vodan Pariah in this one because it's a way to get rid of opponent's pesky creatures. And then the Marauders, no. The Blood Venom Scope we cut. Nope on that. Nope on. The Ascendant Evankar is pretty decent. This is one that it might actually want to go in this deck. I'm going to put it in the maybe board because it gives all non-black creatures -1/-1 and all your black creatures +1/+1, which is basically all of these vampire tokens are. It can kill off your own red vampires, but they've already at that point got their value out of them. So I think that it most likely will end up being one of the cards that wants to be in here. The Overseer is actually kind of cool too because it has landfall and can swarm out all of your cards, but I just think at 4 it's just too tough. Same thing with the Mephedros Vampire is also, it's just too late for its ability. It's decent though because it allows all your vampires to get whenever creatures deals damage to a creature, put a +1 counter, so it's creature. There are some infinite combos with this, like the Walking Ballista. So each creature becomes a vampire. The Walking Ballista becomes a vampire, deals damage to a creature, put a +1. So it just repeatedly puts +1 counters on itself, which is nice. But I for the Swarm deck, I don't think it wants to be in here. Same thing with the Arcana Revenant. It's just too slow. Same thing like Thief of the Blood. Thief of the Blood is very, very good. Kills all the Planeswalkers on the battlefield. But it's just so 6-drop is something you don't want to be doing. That's why we're not going to be running the Necropolis Regent and Bigger Sorin, and even the Butcher, the Malachor, and Defiant Bloodlord, and Cletus Blood Chief. We not one in. Chance of the Dross is kind of funny because you can open it up with doing 3 damage to all of your opponents and then gain that much life, but I don't think it's worthwhile. It does work with like the Faithless Looting type strategy because you can loot it away. But it's 7 mana. It would come out a turn later. It does have Flying Lifelink, but if you don't have it in your opening hand, it's so awkward, and you're running a 100-card deck, so it's very unlikely to have it in. Fish Call is too expensive, and you can see that you get down to these, they're just not very good. So here's the vampires I do. I do think we want Rootborn Defenses in this to give us a way to combat the... Boros Charm's probably actually better than Rootborn, because it gives all of our stuff indestructible. There's a lot of things you can actually run in this particular slot. But this can give a creature double strike, which you never know is the... so there's 99 right here. So now we need to justify the slots to see if I would... Of course, there's other things you can kind of comb through this deck and get rid of... or add some other cards, just Commander Staples here, like Vandal Blast, for example, would want to go in here. Maybe like a Grave Pact or a... those type of cards are great. There's a lot of cards that could easily be put in this deck. So Let's see if any of these are worthwhile. Let's look at our maybe board and see if any of these are worthwhile to throw in. I think we can safely cut the Blood Baron Vizcopa. The Vampire Knack, again, the 3-drop slot really, really needs to be doing something phenomenal. And I think that it can get cut. I think that our draws, we've got our draws. Same thing with this Blood Mad Vampire does have Madness too, but we don't have a lot of Madness enablers. We have the Faithless Looting, Cathartic Reunion, Tormenting Voice type cards. And I did want to put it in, but I mean, we don't. Yeah, this one I'll keep for the second. These 3 are also pretty good. I think Ascendant Evencar wants to be in here. Call the Balloon does not. Kondo's Banner, I think we have enough. We don't have a lot of other legendary creatures. We have Ihini and another Olivia that the Kondo's Banner can be equipped to. But this would be basically the turn 7, equipping it, and then using 2 of our mana on that particular turn 7. So I'm going to cut the banner in this case, just because our legendary creature doesn't come out quick enough. The Bloodlord of Vazgoth, I think, is not good enough. Same thing with the Triana. Same with the Malachor of the Blood Witch. Yeah, it's... Malachor Blood Witch is actually pretty decent, though. It probably wants to go in here. Merciless Eviction is okay. Vampire Nocturnus again, and Kalitas. So these are the 7 cards that I would put kind of in the maybe board, and would run them. And we still actually have 2 slots too. The 2 cards, or was it more than 2 cards that we had in the sideboard or the commander list? So let's go back over these others. We said we wanted the Heirloom Blade, which actually, now that I'm looking at it, I don't know if we care too much. The Heirloom Blade and the Keru Mind Eater would be decent. So those 2 are options. And so we need to add 2 more in here. And I think we didn't want anything else. Yeah, the Bloodline Necromancer, I think there's just better things at the 5. And Kindred Charge is an option. So we probably would want Kindred Charge in this particular deck too. So we need to find 3 slots right now. We have good Lord type abilities. So the Vampire Nocturus gets very, very awkward. +2/+1. Flying on a creature. Probably do want it. So yeah, between Ihini and, do you think we have enough sack outlets? I think we can actually cut a vampire, the 2 lower or higher converted mana cost sack outlet vampires. So it's going to be the Blood Baron and the Vampire Aristocrat we can cut. That gives us 2 of our slots for the cards we want. Blade of the Blood Chief. Whenever a creature dies, put +1 counter on it. If equipped creature is a vampire, put 2. So that's where it goes good with that Exterminator with the Blade of the Blood Chief. But no, honestly, I don't know if we need either of these. I'll keep the Vampire. So, yeah, a Blade of the Blood Chief gets definitely a cut card, in my opinion. So, 1-drops, we do want a healthy amount. I don't see us cutting any of the 1-drops. Possibly like a Vampire Lacerator. That would still give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 1-drops. We probably still do want the Swords of Plowshare or a Terminate type card. We do have a lot of control though in this deck. I don't think we need any more ramp, so the Boros Signets are fine. Silent Visitor is great. Blood Artist is great. Bloodseeker is great. Blood from Vampire, Olivia's Bloodsworn, Gatekeeper, Gifted Aetherborn, Callisto Highborn, Stormkirk Condemned, Hexmage, and these are card draw here. I think we need to keep these in. We possibly could cut a Faithless Looting because we don't have a lot of madness now that I'm looking at it. So I am going to cut just a Faithless Looting, just keeping the Cathartic Reunion and the Tormenting Voice. Could add some cards. So the other cards I'd throw in, I think now, so we need 3 slots. We have 2 slots. I think the Ascendant Evencar is actually really good for this deck. And probably the Vampire Nocturnus would be my next choice to put in. Would be something like that. Again, Kalitas is definitely something that I would consider a metagame choice. Olivia Voldaren is a very powerful, but you want a deck that has a lot of mana to abuse it. So I actually don't think Olivia wants to be in here. And I think the other Malachar Blood Witch could definitely go in. I think it justifies the slot because it is doing that like 1-2 punch. The Emissary is one that I also do think that we want in here. Blood Vampire we probably don't quite need, so I can cut it. And the Emissary, so we're back to needing to cut, what, 2 cards or 3 cards? Going down to 95, and then they'll put us, we need to cut 2 cards out of this. And so, do we have enough to justify getting rid of the swords? I think so. We have enough control to get rid of the swords, and then one of these 2 drops is probably the weak link. It's going to be between like the Fury Blade Vampire. I think Fury Blade Vampire is probably the weaker link. And we'll keep in the Exterminator. It does give us something to do with our mana. And then possibly the Bloodsworn. Do we need to give other vampires haste? I think it's worthwhile. It's one of our better cards that comes out quick. Actually, this is all we need because we have 3 slots here. Yeah. So the 3 cards in the vampire deck I'd keep in, and then something like this. And what this allows you to do, like this is still like, most of these are pretty budget additions. I didn't go all out with this deck. But it does give us a lot of just quick 1 and 2 drops you're curving out very quickly. The Markov is going to come out on turn 6, and then we can follow it up with another card on turn 7. Like the deal damage to each, or the Malachar Blood Witch, like the other card out of the commander set that puts a copy of all your vampires and then swing in. Like all of those I think are the better cards to then do on turn 6, and hopefully you kill all of your opponents at that point with Impact Tremors, with Perforos, which those particular cards. So I know there's probably some cards that I've skipped over. Maybe some other like Blood Artist effects. Maybe Zulapur Cutthroat does want to be in here, even though it's not a vampire. But all in all, I think this has the makings of a very, very powerful Swarm deck. And most of these cards can be upgraded without really putting a huge dent in your wallet. So anyway, comments in the comment section below what you think about this. Again, you can build a vampire tribal deck. I built one with Olivia in the past that has a lot of bigger creatures. And then you'd want those ramp cards in there. You'd want those... Saran Dynamos, Black Markets, Urborg Tomb Yawgmoth. Actually, Urborg Tomb Yawgmoth does want to go in this deck. Forgot about that card for the sideboard. I don't know if you'd want the combo, though. In 3 colors, it gets quite awkward. In that point, you want to put in like the Expedition map to find it. But the Urborg Tomb Yawgmoth can come in here. We don't use a lot of white. I think we can safely get rid of the plains. We have lots of ways to get the dual-colored ones. But yeah, something like this would be the list. Again, let me know in the comment section below. This has been Kevin with the Brewers Council. If you're interested in the Brewers Council, it is on a Patreon tier. And I will build a deck out of any card. You can challenge me to build a deck out of a specific card. And I will do my best to get that going. Or you can just ask me your advice on a particular deck. One of the things that I get is between all the different social media accounts that I have and email, by far the #1 request I have is to look at a deck. I do not have time to look at everyone's deck and give my critique. So time is money. If you really want a deck to be reviewed, this is how you do that. You sign up for the Patreon for the $15 tier, and once per month I'll look at a deck and give you my advice on it, and usually do a video because it's something that makes good content. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this list. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.